Right, hey everyone, this is Ash. Welcome back to the King's Speech. And this video I've been meaning to do for quite a while in the last week, but didn't get time to actually kind of doing it. But yeah, I want to talk about One Piece chapter 931, and really want to talk about it in relation to a thread I wrote recently on Twitter talking about, the events of the chapter and Sanji and kind of exploring the idea of pride. So I kind of want to get into that more in depth to kind of explain my thoughts on it and really my thoughts on the whole chapter in general. So a quick rundown of what I'm going to do. I'll do a quick run through of 931, kind of recap it and give some of my thoughts as I go along. And then I'll get into the actual nitty gritty of what exactly my problems with this chapter were, given that, on initial read, it seems like something I should have enjoyed a lot, given how it supposedly develops Sanji's character. But like I said, we'll get into that. But first, recap. So, One Piece chapter 931, Soba Mask. We have another request from the famous Noda Skywalker, with requests frogs tap dancing with delight in puddles from Nami's rain. So you see Nami holding a little leaf above her head as an umbrella, and you see Zeus raining down on the frogs. It's really cute. So we pick up with Sanji going, "This should just do the trick for a disguise in a pinch." And then page one's like, "What's that? Canned food?" And then all the cooks are going, "Wait, the Soba cook actually showed up? That fool. He stepped up so he could be killed? Otherwise the entire town would be destroyed. What do you think you're doing, Sangoro?" And that's Usopp talking. He's like, "Who cares about the town? Just forget it." And that's Law. And Sanji goes, "This is a battle against an emperor of the sea. There may be times when you can't save lives if you're too stubborn. And there may be times when you can save lives if you just learn to swallow your pride." Oh, wow. Oh, man, Sanji's really going so far. Such great development there. So he puts the suit on with the flap. He's like, "Especially if this thing has the power to help. It's like, putting this stupid thing on doesn't mean that I've sunk to the level of being Germa. I'm only testing it out." Usopp's like, "Huh? What's going on?" And so he takes off his kimono. He's like, "Hey, I don't think you should strip in public." And you see Germa sound effect as he, puts his hands out. Transformation sequence begins. And he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what is this?" And the Frankie's like, "A transformation?" I do like that this is the first time the Frankie is seeing someone else transform. It's like he's getting the sparkle eyes this time. Usopp's like, "Oh, that's awesome. What kind of tech is that?" And then you see Pedro going, "Why is he on the roof now?" And Law goes, "What is he doing with that suit of all things? I recognize that. That's the number 3 member of the army of evil Germa 66, Stealth Black." And I want to get into that a little bit later. And Sanji's like, "How do you know so much about that?" And Law goes, "Everyone in the North Blue does." And then Sanji goes, "I don't care. Never call me that again." And then Law goes, "Look, I was a regular reader. I hated Germa." Sanji's like, "So do I." And Pedro's like, "So you're not just some Soba cook. Name yourself." Quick aside before I go on. If Oda had actually written this properly and given us an actual arc for Sanji leading up to him putting on the raid suit, this would have been such a killer moment, because he does look incredibly badass with the hair and design and everything. It looks incredibly, incredibly cool. I love it a lot. Hate the moments leading up to it. I just cannot stand it. And so, of course, he proudly declares that he is Soba Mask. And they're like, "That's the worst name you could have chosen. Come up with another one." It's like, "Please, just let us pick out the name. I'm begging you." So he goes, "Let's go, Lizard. Time to see what the power of science is all about." And he takes off with a boom, and he smacks right into page one and makes him eat some tiles off a roof. He's like, huh? Oh no, sorry. Page one comes and tries to snap at him. Ends up taking a bite out of the roof. He's like, he vanished? And you see a spin, and then he comes up from below and hits him right in the solar plexus. Usopp's like, what a blow. Wait, where did it come from? And Frankie's like, it was so fast I couldn't see it. And Law goes, not quite. Years ago, the newspaper ran a comic strip called Sora, Warrior of the Sea. The enemy in the story was an evil army called Germa 66. The Germa member named Stealth Black was particularly tough to fight because he could vanish. He would project the background over his body so that he couldn't be seen against it. And Usopp's like, you know way too much about this. Sanji's like, what's up with the suit? Did I just vanish? And he turns back into his childhood memories again. Oh, boy. Where, the clear fruit turns you invisible? It's like there was a time when I wanted to become an invisible man. And now, you've ruined my dream of eating the clear fruit. And he's talking to Absalom. He goes, so, the dream I thought was dead has come true with the power of hated Germa science? What twisted irony. But this power will indeed be useful for the woman's helping my friends. What a dilemma. The cape is a shield, accelerators on the heels, floating devices under the soles of the feet, and invisibility on top of that. This is the power of the raid suit. And you see an invisible man? Now I'm very curious. Who are you really? And you see page one in his dinosaur form with a huge page one just tattooed across his chest. He goes, reveal yourself. And Sanji blocks his kick with the leg, his punch with the leg, and he still managed to whip him into a building. Several buildings. That's actually a pretty powerful blow. I'm like, whoa, is Sanji okay? And Law's like, those ancient types don't mess around. And Sanji's like, it hurts a bit, but this stuff is durable. The city's gonna fall apart before I do. Page one's like, guess I'll go and deliver his corpse to Boss Kiyoshiro. What was that all about anyway? And then Law and the rest are taking off. It's like, hey, why are we leaving Sangoro behind? He told us to get a move on. It's like, I know, but still. And Sanji's like, I'm going to have to ask Franosuke and Uso Hachi to change the design for me. And he leaps down onto page one with, kaboom. And then Law's like, there'll be more of them and more fuss about us. Gotta stay out of the capital for a while. Let's flee and take shelter in Ebisu Town. Oh shit, they're on their way to Zoro. Did not notice that the first time around. So you see, meanwhile at Orochi's castle, you see him partying with the geishas and the oirons. And Robin sneaks off to do her intel, and she goes, what an old and eerie room. A land closed to the outside for centuries. The country that created the poneglyphs. A stone must be here. Perhaps there's a hidden door somewhere. And you hear a searching for something. And we have the Shogun of Wano's personal ninja force, Orochi's Oniwa Banshu. And again, some really, really cool designs for all these ninja that Oda's come up with. They look really, really awesome. Really love that, at least. Like suspicious actions to take in the presence of ninja. Illogical. It's like, no way, when did they? Don't know what a ninja is? Like, perhaps she's an outsider. The curiosity can be deadly, Geisha. Let's hear your excuse. And you only get one. And we have Oniwa Banshu Captain Fukuro Kuju. And we have Kuri Beach Kuri. I'm real worried about Big Bro Luffy. I told you, Otama, he's fine, Nin. But Master said that no one's ever come back from the prison in Udon. And you see Momonosuke in the background just going, Taya! And he's just whipping his kendo sword around. And then Momonosuke's like, I know Raizo's tidings are late. If only I were stronger, I would rush to the rescue right now. But, like, what's that? Who goes there on yon beach, Nin? Oh, that's adorable. Okay, so Chopper's climbing up all the trees and things and acting like a ninja like he saw Raizo do. That's super adorable. And you see a person, and you see Big Mom washed up on the beach. And Momonosuke goes, a giant. Would be larger, but it's huge for a human. And Kiko's like, is that a woman? It's like, I wonder who's bigger, her or Kaido? And Chopper, of course, freaks out, like, huh? Is that? He's like, it's big, Mom, and he chops himself from screaming out. They're like, chop him on, what is this? He's like, don't speak, she'll wake up. We have to get out of here. If she wakes up, we're done for. Like, no, it doesn't matter anyway. Assuming she came here chasing after us. And then he's like, what? This is the dreaded Big Mom. And then Momonosuke turns into his dragon form. He's like, don't shout. I'll finish her off right now. Think of her as Kaido. She's just like Kaido. Choppermon, you have to explain what's going on. He's like, I'll do it later. And you hear an erg cough, hack. He's like, too late, we gotta run. The cough's like, ooh. It's like, where am I? It's like, who am I? And we see the infamous Big Mom has amnesia storyline. Alright, before I get into all the Sanji stuff, I guess I'll kind of address my thoughts on the whole Big Mom storyline. I'll probably talk more in depth about this because me and a couple of friends are going to do another One Piece stream at the beginning of March, on March 3rd specifically. We haven't decided the time yet, but we're going to do a stream then. So I'll probably talk more about the specifics of Big Mom's character and portrayal then, so we can have more of an open discussion. So I won't get too much into that now. But to just address the amnesia, I have been a proponent of, from the very beginning, saying Big Mom is going to get a redemption arc. One way or another, Oda's going to turn her into an ally. And to me, the only question is, what manner is he going to do that in? And so, if this is just, Big Mom has regular amnesia and is going to be, Chopper teaches her how to be good and how to be a good person and all that, then Big Mom, when she goes back, she retains all these lessons and she's like, oh no, such a terrible person, I'll do better now. That would be shitty storytelling. That would just be extreme garbage storytelling. If that's the route he's going, might as well scrub this storyline now. The other way it could potentially go ties into a theory I've held on to since Whole Cake Island, despite, almost everyone else believing the opposite. But my personal theory has always been that Big Mom is a fusion of Mother Carmel and Charlotte Linlin. And so my big question with this amnesia thing is, who are we actually seeing wake up right now? Are we going to see when we see this come back again in the chapters ahead, are we going to see Big Mom revert to a childlike personality, or are we going to see, adult Big Mom just lost her memory, doesn't know who she is? But I'm curious to find out who, because my theory has always been that Carmel has basically been kind of subtly influencing Big Mom and her actions. I'm not going to go into the full theory here. If anyone's interested, hit me up on Twitter or on the comments below. I'll link you to the full idea. But I'm curious to see who's actually woken up, and if Big Mom being tossed into the seawater for, I assume, would be the first time since forever, literally, probably since he was 6 years old. If the devil fruit powers got knocked out, who are we seeing actually wake up? And that, to me, would be the interesting way to see this go. But right now, not a big fan of the storyline. But let's talk about, before I get into my whole spiel about Sanji and Pride and all that, let's talk about something that I've seen a lot of fans toss out about this chapter, which is the idea that, exactly what Sanji says here, that he's basically using the Germa's raid suit as a disguise. That's the sole purpose he was using it for, was only a disguise. He wasn't using it as a power-up. He wasn't using it to try to get all these gadgets and stuff. He only wanted a disguise to protect his identity in case, so that Kaido's forces don't figure out who he is. A couple of things with that. He then blatantly admits that he's going to use the power of this Germa suit he's going to use the power of the raid suit because he wants to put aside his pride and save lives, and he's basically going to use whatever tools that are available to him, directly counteracting what he just said about it being a disguise. Then some fans have also argued that, even if he did put on the suit only as a disguise, he didn't know that it would give him any other advantages, He's only using it for a disguise, so he didn't know he would get, what is it? Go to that page. Yeah, so he didn't know he'd get the cape shield or the accelerators on his heels or the invisibility power. That, granted, he would not have known that the suit would give him invisibility powers. He knows the suit is fireproof. He knows the suit would give him the floating devices and the accelerators, and he knew the suit would be bulletproof. So it's kind of bullshit to argue that Sanji did not know at all that this would be anything but a disguise that he was using, when he put it on. That's garbage. Let's toss that out right now. The second thing, so he wants to use this as a disguise, to protect his crew and protect his identity and all that. Germa is one of the most well-known forces in the underground in the world. Anyone that dabbles in that, and we know Kaido's forces do, knows who Germa 66 is. We also know, thanks to Law, that everyone from the North Blue, I'm just going to confirm this, what I'm thinking of, but everyone from the North Blue knows all about Germa, and Kaido has X-Drake on his crew. And so X-Drake, when he hears about this guy wearing a suit from Germa 66, is going to know exactly who they are. I'm just trying to see quickly where it says if he's from. Yeah, he's from the North Blue. Actually, yeah, so he's from the North Blue. So Drake is going to know that this suit belongs to Germa 66. And even considering, taking all of that aside, Sanji's bounty poster has him listed as Vinsmoke Sanji. Vinsmoke Sanji. If all they have to do is look at the Straw Hat crew and go, hey, look, there's this guy called Vinsmoke on their crew. Can he possibly be related to that famous Germa 66 family, the Vinsmokes? There's so much stupidity here, and considering that, Sanji tried to use this as a disguise when it completely fails on all levels to be a disguise. And the thing that bugs me the most about this, all the arguments about he wanted a disguise, he didn't want to use the power-ups and all that. He could have literally wrapped, one of those robber masks across his face, stolen, when Komurasaki's wearing that fox mask. He could have gone to a store nearby, conveniently located, stole a mask, put it on, poof, instant disguise. But the fact that he went straight for the Germa raid suit is just bad storytelling. Now, to be fair, I have been talking incessantly about how Sanji would have an arc where he would come to eventually accept exactly what he did in this chapter, putting aside his pride, doing all that, putting on the suit for the sake of his crew. But this is just badly written, extremely, extremely terrible storytelling, and I'll get into the hows and whys of that. But I'll also point out a quick mention here. There's one thing I can think of, or one line of reasoning for why Oda felt the need to have Sanji put on the raid suit this early in the arc. And again, this kind of ties into theories and stuff I've had for a long time. But as of this chapter, barring any other new information we get and basic assumptions, Germa 66 is still a part of the world government. They haven't been, as far as we know, the government hasn't found out that they tried to make an alliance with Big Mom. I've also been of the mind, and this is again a theory I've held for a long time, is that X-Drake is a mole inside Kaido's crew, and he's either working for the revolutionaries or he's working for the Marines as a double agent. I'm more inclined towards the former, but it could also very well be the latter. There's no real way to tell right now. But again, I've been a proponent of the idea that we are going to see we're going to see the Marines invade Wano at the end of this arc and turn it into a puppet state. I know I've already done a theory about why I think this in prior videos. I've written editorials and stuff about it, so I'm not going to go into detail about it here. Again, if you'd like to read the theory, hear about it, please DM me on Twitter or just send a comment here and I'll link you to the appropriate media. But I've been of the mind, I still am of the mind, the Revolutionaries and the Marines are going to send forces into Wano. The Revolutionary one's a little easier to explain because, after Dressrosa, we saw Koala telling Dragon that, hey, the weapons we just confiscated from Doflamingo, there's only very few countries that have this special metal called Drunken Iron Ore. They're the only ones that can make it. If we can find out where it's coming from, we can, basically cut off the production supply for this. So I would suspect that, they're going to figure out eventually that Wano is one of those countries, and they're going to need someone in there. And that's why, I've been on the mind that X-Drake is that person. And, when X-Drake's Viver card came out, we also got the info that he specifically sought out Kaido's crew, and he wanted to join him at all costs. And there's a multitude of reasons that could be. But again, like Theory had on here, I've talked about how X-Drake might have potentially met with Vegapunk, and Vegapunk might have recruited him to the Revolutionaries. And this whole idea of, North Blue, like Sora, the Warrior of the Sea, being a big hit in North Blue, makes me think back to X-Drake when you saw him as a child, playing dress up as a Marine, and he seemed really proud. And it might be a case of, his father used to be an honorable Marine, whatever, before he became corrupt, and Drake looked up to him. But what if Drake actually looked up to Sora, and Sora was his inspiration for joining the Marines? Because, he's like, oh, they're a righteous force for good. And once he joined, he kind of became dissuaded of that notion. He kind of became disenfranchised with what the Marines were actually like and how corrupt they became. And that's why he joined. But again, a bunch of digressions here. But if that being the case, I could see that being the reason why Oda introduced this so early, is if Germa is still part of the world government, there's a couple of ways now that Oda can use that as a way to kind of introduce all these forces starting to converge on Wano. Because Germa, we know, are mercenaries. They will basically sell themselves out to the highest bidder. If news got out from Wano that, one of Germa 66, has infiltrated Wano, has been sighted doing whatever, and the Marines get a hold of this, they're going to freak out, because Germa 66 has been to Reverie in the past, and they may very well have access to state secrets and secret information about the other countries that all the kings and queens at Reverie would not want to get out to pirates or other forces. And that could be impetus enough for Akainu to move in, and take out Wano, to be like, hey, it's either that Germa's selling out our secrets to Kaido and Ko, or what if Germa is allying with Kaido? What if he's bought their services as mercenaries, and he's planning to basically start a full-scale war with us? And Akainu would basically go, we need to strike first before he gets a chance, or else he'll wipe us out. This could also happen via Big Mom learning world government learning that Big Mom was allied with Germa. And so what if because we know that the Marines know that Big Mom and Kaido are about to have a conversation. So what if they're thinking Big Mom and Kaido are about to form an alliance, and they've hired Germa as mercenaries, and they're going to start a full-scale war? I mean, that is alone for me, would be reason enough to see the revolutionaries move and the Marines move on Wano to try to find out what the hell is actually going on, given that it is a closed off country. If that's the reason Oda bought out the raid suit so early in this arc, it makes all of this, a little bit more palatable. Not great storytelling still. It's still very crappy execution, but it makes it more understandable why he kind of went this direction, kind of flying by the seat of his pants. But that's the only kind of justification I have for it. Otherwise, still think it's pretty bad storytelling. But alright, so let's get into my kind of massive breakdown of Pride. So, talked about this kind of briefly, in a semi one-sided thread I'd posted on Twitter recently, and I'll post the link below for anyone that hasn't had a chance to read it yet. And it's something has been a point of contention for me with, a certain OP character, the one we've been talking about. And when I first read this chapter, after I posted my thread, it felt like Oda was very serious, actually going to address the very point, I was talking about in my thread, because I posted this like a day before the chapter dropped. And in that very chapter, it seems like Oda's going, hey, here's all your concerns. I'm addressing this right now. Yeah, we're seeing the Sanji development happen. Surface level, definitely looked like that. Once you dig deeper, though, it doesn't look like that's actually the case about what's going on. But before I get into all that mini digression, what is pride exactly? So literal definitions, from the dictionary. So as a noun, it's a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements, the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated, or from qualities or possessions that are widely admired. 2, consciousness of one's own dignity. And as a verb, it's be especially proud of a particular quality or skill. So what I found interesting, like when I was trying to research this for like this video and for my thread, was how in how many documents and texts and things you see pride being talked about in a negative way. You have the sayings like, pride goeth before the fall. Pride is one of the 7 deadly or mortal sins, and, that's kind of the direction I kind of took my thread, was talking about it in a very negative light. And I kind of realized, after I wrote it, that it was a little bit one-sided. And so I want to kind of clarify to say, I'm not trying to say that pride is all bad, that you can't have pride in certain things or in certain situations, or that, you should completely rid yourself of it. But I think what fascinates me, how it's portrayed in One Piece. I don't know, actually, what I think of what fascinates me is how it's portrayed in One Piece, and that's what I kind of want to use this video to talk about. So, yeah, because my thread wasn't very kind of nuanced in that regard. That's why I kind of wanted to make this video, was talk about it more in depth and give a more rounded, nuanced view of it. And so, let's kind of talk about it first with, what does Sanji pride himself on? And think there's really 2 to 3 key areas you can kind of break it down into what he prides himself on. So most obvious one, he prides himself on being a chef. Subsection of this, subsection, or you can consider it second key one you want, is he prides himself on feeding anyone that's hungry. Okay, so the first 2 kind of related to that. And then the third kind of big thing he prides himself on is he prides himself on being a man. And again, there's subsections to this that we can kind of talk about, but they're kind of too closely interrelated for me to be like, they're vastly separate and different things to talk about separately. So I'm going to put them all under basically catch-all umbrella to kind of talk about. And the last area he prides himself on, like the umbrella one of this, is he prides himself on his values and upbringings. And this ties into, something I've written about my past 2 editorials, is Sanji wants Zeph to be proud of him. And this is something I'll get into like way at the end after we talk about some of this. But let's go with it in the order I talked about it. So the first one ties into one of my biggest problems with 931 and the whole, Soba Mask persona. So chapter 927, we got this, where Nami and Shinobu are flying off in the kite. We got this gag of, oh look, Sanji set up a Soba stall. And I'll read exactly the panel it came from, because I actually want to clarify some stuff about this as well. No, why the hell did I go with that one? Just give me a second. It actually accidentally went to 926. I want to get to 927. Nope, I didn't want 926. Never mind. Okay, so correction, it was actually chapter 926, not 927. Come on. I think it's this chapter anyway. Nope. What the hell chapter was it? 925? No, it can't be 926. It has to be 926. God. Yes, this chapter. Hold on. Sometimes Visits Things doesn't load very well. So, yeah. So they fly off in the kite. You have them saying, oh my, welcome. It's like, what's this line for? Bargain sale? And then you see Sanji going, come and have a serving, ladies. Melts on your tongue, but al dente between your teeth. It's my special soba. And you have Soba card cook Sangoro. And he goes, when you want the finest noodles money can buy, nothing short of Sangoro's special soba will suffice. And of course, a bunch of beautiful ladies are eating it, and they're freaking out about how delicious it is. And now he's going, oh, those aren't samurai he's recruiting. Now, I want to clarify that my problem with this kind of ties into something, that's been I've been talking about a lot with post-time skip One Piece, but especially, post kind of Dressrosa, Whole Cake Island. The Straw Hats are not taking any of these conflicts seriously or with the seriousness that it deserves. And that's, again, something that annoys me so much about 931 is, they're supposed to be portrayed as the underdogs in this fight against Kaido. And we're supposed to think, hey, they need every single person they can possibly recruit to their side because they're facing, massively one-sided odds. They need every help they can get. And so Sanji's role is, supposed to be go sell delicious food, recruit samurai to our cause. And Oda instead decides to go for the gag of, ha ha ha, look at that. Sanji's supposed to be, recruiting samurai to help with the Onigashima raid, but instead he set up a soba stall and he's feeding pretty ladies. Who else but Sanji? And what I hate about this is it kind of undercuts the tension we're supposed to be feeling of what Law told us on Punk Hazard that, going off against Kaido with all the forces they can marshal in an ideal scenario, they have a 30% chance of victory. And none of the Straw Hats really seem to be acting as though they're in any danger or if they're actually going up against a legitimate threat. This is kind of my whole problem with this scene is, one of my friends was asking me on Twitter, like, what's my problem with this scene? It's like, because she points out that, Sanji, samurai and their whatever have spouses, they have daughters, sisters, whatever. Sanji could be getting information from them, and it's not like he set up a soba stall especially just to attract beautiful women. And I wasn't trying to imply any of that with my criticisms, But we see in this very chapter that that's exactly what he's doing. He wants the beautiful ladies to come and eat his food and tell them how much they enjoy it. And if we had even one scene where we saw Sanji actually, talking to the ladies and being like, hey, let's gossip a little bit, give me some information, something like that, to show he wasn't just farting around and he was actually doing something to help further their cause, I wouldn't be as mad about the fact that Oda once again is kind of playing off a gag for the sake of a gag and undercutting all this tension we're supposed to be feeling. And that's what annoys me about that scene. But going off from that, so, follow from that is, some of Kiroshiro's goons see him and they're like, hey, how dare this guy operate in our area without, our permission, without having paid us a fee, whatever. And so, of course, they come over and, break up his stall and start, trashing the food and throwing it on the ground. And Sanji responds as Sanji does. And he beats the crap out of them for, daring to besmirch food in front of him. And then, force feeds them the soba that they so unceremoniously spilled. Sanji fans, of course, love this because they're like, oh, yeah, like, oh, look at that Sanji. Oh, it's so great, so very in character form, so very typical. Oh, good guy Sanji doing what he's standing up for, right? Except cause and effect means, of course, that Kiyoshiro, as we see later, can't just stand idly by as his goonies have been beaten up. So he's like, all right, I need to get the Tobiropo from Kaido. I want them to go find the Soba guy, exact some punishment. And then after that, we see events playing out to chapter 931, where Frankie and Law and Usopp all have to run away, bemoaning the fact that their cover is blown and they can't get caught or else Nami and Robin will be danger. And again, kind of brief digression to what I've been saying to a lot of stuff about the tension. Ever since we've entered Wano, and for a lot of post-time skip stuff compared to pre, it hasn't felt like the Straw Hats are ever in any danger of losing, and that really undercuts a lot of the tension we as readers are supposed to feel. And the quick and dirty of this is, when you read a story, you're invested in the characters and their struggles because there is a chance that they may not lose. Consciously we may realize that, hey, this is a story about the protagonist. At the end of the series, at the end of whatever, they will achieve their goal, or they will get what they want in the end. But it's never just a flawless or costless victory. And if their victory doesn't feel earned, or fought for, and it feels like if it's handed to them, then we're not going to be as emotionally invested in these fights as we would be. And Oda has been really, really slapdash with this post-time skip, but putting in a lot of crappy red herrings and cliffhangers. Most recent one coming to mind is the infamous chapter 900, where he does that shitty fake out of pretending the Thousand Sunny got blown up. Instead goes with the reveal that, oh, it wasn't blown up. We just, Watatsumi stuffed it in his mouth and fled off underwater, and it was actually the Sun Pirate ship that got blown up. Or, Kaido blowing up the mountain. We're supposed to think, oh my god, Luffy's thinking that, his crew's blown up, and, oh, his reactions and everything makes sense. Except if we as the readers don't buy into that, it just makes everything that comes after that frustrating. Because when Kaido blows off half the mountain, we know that the Straw Hats are not dead, and there's like a very good chance that they're not even maimed in any way or in any kind of actual harm. So it kind of undercuts a lot of that tension when they, don't seem to care about that. And even in this, even in the Soba chapter, where after the Soba chapter, after Luffy's gotten the shit beat out of him by Kaido with one strike, He's now imprisoned in, Udon Town. And the Straw Hats couldn't give less than a shit. They're happily sitting around, eating soba, watching Sanji, blow his cover completely. Even though they're supposed to do anything but draw attention to themselves, none of them really seem to care. They're just taking it really chill for a group that's supposedly really, really worried about how they're going to defeat, one of the strongest pirates in the world. And it almost makes it seem like, Oda's breaking the fourth wall here, where the Straw Hats seem almost aware that they are the main protagonists of this story. And so no matter what, they're really never going to come to any harm. There's never going to be any consequences. Prime example I love to use for like a perfect example of this is Dressrosa. Law gets his arm sawed off by Doflamingo. Gets it restitched back on. And I guarantee if you looked at it now, he probably doesn't even have a scar. No limited movement, nothing. So Oda likes to do the thing of where he pretends like there's an actual consequence for something the characters will do, like, a fight they get into. Then the next chapter, he'll reverse it back and be like, oh, don't worry, they're completely fine now. Live to fight another day. And it gets so tiring after a while compared to, pre-time skip, where you had Zoro and Baratier getting sliced across the chest by Mihawk. And in Arlong Park, him still having that wound, and it's being debilitating to his fight, to the point where Arlong even makes mention of the fact, what the hell is wrong with you that you thought you could fight like this, with this gaping sword slash on your chest is bleeding, like you're just massively bleeding from. Or even after Thriller Bark, where he takes in all of Luffy's pain and all the damage from that. And then you see that he's still suffering from it in Sabaudi, and that's why they get caught. He can't run away, is he can't fight because he's still reeling from the damage taken from that. You have that going to, this stuff, and I have to wonder when the disconnect happened and why, why it happened. And, the other example I just think of is Doflamingo. Law gave him radiation poisoning, and he's like, oh, your guts are literally going to disintegrate. Doflamingo stitches it up with strings. He's like, oh, it's totally fine now. And even when he gets knocked out and his string powers go away, somehow his guts stay intact and he survives getting irradiated. What the hell? And, I know it's tempting, because Oda wants you to feel these victories are earned, and he won't commit to anything. And I know fans want to tell me that, hey, what about Pedro? What about Pound and Whole Cake Island? Those two characters got killed, Or what about Monet and Virgo? Monet and Virgo, granted, might actually be casualties of post-time skip. I want to think that they're dead, because he did seem to make that pretty final. But there is no way in hell that the two characters protected by the will of P, three characters protected by the will of P, Pedro, Peckham's Pound, are dead in any way. Although, again, brief digression, I'll point out, the Straw Hats don't really seem to give a shit that they left Peckham's on Whole Cake Island to die after he rescued Luffy from Mirror World, and they never kind of mention the fact, what happened to him or his fate or anything. Again, Oda just does not seem to care anymore, and he's gotten really, really lax. Could Pedro and Pound come back injured? Good chance of that. Is it going to mean anything for the series going forward? I don't know. That's the thing that gets me is Oda said, in interviews and things, that, oh, I don't know how Luffy's going to beat Kaido, I can't think of a way he's going to beat him because I don't want him to just, punch him and beat him like that. It's going to be really hard. I have to think of something creative to do. And he's been hyping up this fight with, all the Straw Hats are going to face the greatest challenge yet. It's going to be so hard. But how can I buy any of that if he's not actually going to make us feel it as readers? And that's the big sticking point. What annoys me so much about Sanji's little speech about, swallowing your pride and saving lives and all that, he chose to draw attention to himself when he did this whole shtick on, when he would not put aside his pride as a chef for the sake of the crew back then, earlier during Wano. And then now he's saying, no, now he's after they've gotten themselves into trouble, they've gotten recognized, and there's a very real danger of them getting found out or tortured. And, this might even be having been inspired by Usopp saying, if I get captured, I'm going to squeal, I'm going to sing like a bird, and I'll tell them everything. And Sanji's like, oh no, I can't have any danger coming to my beloved Robin and Nami Swan. And so, him pretending that, oh, let me pretend to be all noble for a second and pretend I'm sacrificing something to take this guy out, pisses me off to no end because it's an act. This is all just, this is all like a stage musician's illusion. And Oda has been very, very good at doing this thing where he makes characters look very noble and gives the illusion of change without actually having them develop or grow in any significant or meaningful way. What do I mean by that? So let's get into, my thread, stuff I wrote in my thread. So in it I wrote about, how I would have liked to see the scenario played out differently, but in a way that realistically commits to, characters actually changing or showing progression or development or growth, and that fits in with actual themes of this arc. Is I wish Sanji had actually let the goons destroy his stall, and he plays the role of kind of like a simpering buffoon who's like, oh, I'm so sorry, sirs. I shouldn't have done this, silly me, blah, 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 all that. And I know Sanji fans would have hated that. Most One Piece fans are like, oh, how is Sanji degrading himself like that? This goes against everything he stands for and everything he is. He looks so uncool, blah, blah, blah. And, would this goes his pride against the chef? Yeah, undoubtedly, it goes against everything that Sanji stands for. And it's a stinging blow against Sanji's stands. And it makes him look silly, and not in the way of, not to imply that Sanji hasn't looked kind of ridiculous before. Whenever he does his whole like stupid shtick towards the women where he acts like a goofball around them, does like the wavy Nami Swan, did you miss me and all that shit. It wouldn't be that same kind of silly, but it would have been necessary, I think, as an act, and I'll kind of get into why later. But I'm not saying that he would have done that, just like Oda just completely ignores it and moves on and doesn't address it. But have him do the act during the day when he knows they're being watched, when he knows that he has to keep his cover as Sangoro the Soba chef. Then at night have him go visit the goons, in disguise, not the raid suit, again, dumb idea. Have him wear a disguise. Kinemon gets him a disguise. He goes and kicks the crap out of the goons at night. Adopting a new persona as whatever hero. And then this was something I talked about again in the thread. Was I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the manga Food Wars, but in one of the arcs in the series, it's called the Moon Festival arc. The main character Soma basically, there's a arc where he has to he's creating a Chinese food stall stand. He has to make a certain number of sales each day, and right now he's losing badly because he's kind of stuck in one area. So what he decides to do is create a moving soba, like a moving restaurant, and each night he sets out at a different place and he introduces a different food that he's created every night. And I would have loved to see Sanji doing that in Wano. Imagine him. Imagine the mythos of this strange chef that shows up, every night, different districts of Wano with this food cart, you know, feeding the hungry masses. And then each night, when he appears, he offers a completely different recipe from the day before. And this would tie in perfectly to something we have not seen since Punk Hazard. Is Sanji's training on Peachy Kingdom. He learned the 99 recipes of, the new Kama land. And like the 99 vital recipes. And he could actually use this to uplift the spirits of the people of Wano, feeding them delicious food. And by proxy also, revitalize them, strengthen them, and get them ready. So when the Kozuki clan comes back and they're ready to start a revolt, you have the commoners on their side because, they're behind the Soba chef. They're like, yeah, we're actually strong now. We're not weak and scared anymore. We're actually ready to fight. And this would also be a great way for Sanji to kind of keep Kaido's forces preoccupied with him rather than, Nami, Robin, and them so that they could do their work better. Is, have them chase around this mysterious new chef that's shown around. And they try to find him in, different districts. And you have the common people hiding him in, like, their different houses and areas. And then you have, like, this massive manhunt out for this character, not affiliated with the Straw Hats in any way, going around every night. And then the other Straw Hats, because of the chaos he's creating, can actually go around doing their own thing, gathering intel, without worrying about having to be molested by Kaido's forces. And I want to point out, like, this seems to be something that people are missing about at this kind of point when it's bringing it up. Sanji is feeding the citizens in the wealthiest district of the country. If he had been feeding, say, the citizens of Ibisu, or if he'd been feeding, the ones left over in the starving town in Okabore, or if he'd been feeding Tama's people in Amigasa village, that frames this entire act. Like, if the goons had come when he was feeding people in those areas and they're like, hey, how dare you feed, these people, they're enemies of the Shogun, how dare you? And if at that point they destroyed his cart, like, throwing the food around and everything, that's completely different scenario and different framing. That would be totally understandable and why he would react in this way. Because he's like, how dare you do something like this? And to me, that would be a point where, he should have his pride in what he's doing and shouldn't be able to give this up. But doing it in the wealthiest district, not having to worry about it, I mean, it just doesn't sit right with me. And again, digression aside, I want to talk about this with, with regards to Sanji as a chef. Sanji getting mad at them for ruining, good food, given his history, is understandable. I understand where it's coming from and why fans argue that, it's a vital part of his character that you cannot ignore. But does that mean he needed to retaliate to kind of maintain his pride as a chef and, his pride as someone that feeds the hungry? And I guess to me, the answer to that question is, what is he willing to sacrifice for it? Because this is something, again, Oda has been very terrible at, is you cannot gain something without giving something up in return. But Oda always does that in a way, he's done that repeatedly for Sanji especially, is he never has to give up something or learn anything new, because he always frames scenarios and choreographs in such a way that he's never actually had to be challenged on any of his beliefs or any of his values or face consequences for his actions. And it's not something I'll get into a little bit later. And I think, small aside I'll say here, that kind of occurred to me before, was because I'm rereading the series now. Zoro once ate a rice ball that was smushed into the dirt, and it is still to date one of the greatest character moments for him, especially as an introductory bit. And I get that, anger Sanji feels at people ruining perfectly good food, but there's no reason in the scenario I talked about, just now, that he couldn't have salvaged the food. Like when the scenario suggested that he kind of grovels and apologizes after they destroy his cart. There was no reason he couldn't have salvaged the food after that. And he could have tried to repackage it and be like, hey, try to clean it off and whatever and try to refeed it to the citizens of the Flower Capital. And you could have had a great moment with that where it's like, oh, this haughty citizens of Flower Capital, like, hey, how dare you try to feed us that garbage food? We saw them tossing it on the ground. How dare you expect us to eat something like that? And Sanji could have been like, well, what's wrong with it? It's perfectly fine food still. There's nothing really wrong with it. So why are you turning up their nose at a food that's just a little bit slightly dirty? Which again ties into his character moment where he's just like, when I was starving and I was stuck on an island, I would have killed for any kind of food. If it had a little bit of dirt on it, that wouldn't have bothered me. And it would have been a great character moment. After that, he's kind of thinking about like what to do with this. And either Otoko or someone else mentions, hey, there's people outside the town. I'm sure would appreciate your food if you want to, go feed them. And it would have been nice to see him, take on the persona of the, mysterious chef, because he goes to, the people of, say, Okobore town. He's like, hey, I've got this food. I'm sorry it's slightly dirty, but, are you willing to kind of eat it? And they would be so starved for food. You could have had a great character moment where you see the people in those towns eating Sanji's food and talking about how great it is and how delicious it is. And Sanji's like, oh, you're not mad that it's like dirty or disgusting or, it's covered in like this. And they could have been like, no, like we're just happy that someone was willing to share their food with us. We don't matter, how it looks because we're starving so badly. And it would have been a great contrast to Sanji then reminiscing about his past and thinking, this is what I'm fighting for and these are the people I'm fighting for. Instead of, this fake bullshittery that we got with this chapter. And now kind of get to kind of the hard stuff about this. The things that Sanji values, above all else, and even under the pain of death, either for him or his crew, he would never abandon, was his pride as a man. Water 7 Enya's Lobby is one of the arcs that when I revisit it, Grant on Twitter was reading up to that arc recently. I hate that arc so much on reread. And before the events of Whole Cake Island was something that was easier for me to kind of accept and overlook on the first times because I could kind of convince myself when I was going through it, or at least I had more belief in Oda back then that he'd give us a good reason for why Sanji so strictly adhered to his chivalry, and we got an answer to that on Whole Cake Island, where it turns out Zeph indoctrinated Sanji with these fanatical teachings and delivery and impressed on him this idea that, real men don't hit women because, like literally because there's a rule that's been around. No one knows why it's a rule, why it's important, why it matters. Doesn't matter. It's a rule that if you are a man and you pride yourself on being one, you have to follow this, or else we'll take away your man card. You can't call yourself a man anymore if you violate this rule. And again, I've written about this extensively in the last 2 editorials that I wrote. And again, I won't go into a full-blown breakdown of it here. I'll post in the link below or in the description below for anyone that wants to take a read if you haven't already. But quick summary, the way it's framed, it makes sense why Sanji took all of Zeph's lessons to heart so much, and like why he so rigidly adheres to them. Because Whole Cake Island showed us that as a kid, he was treated like he was an embarrassment. He wasn't given any love or acceptance by his biological father. And then after he ran away, years later, he met a man that was the exact opposite. He met this stranger that was robbing his ship, who, when Sanji got knocked into the sea, dove after him to rescue him. And when they got stranded on an island with no hopes of rescue, gave him all of his food so that Sanji could survive, and then chopped off his own leg, which he was, famous for as Red Leg Zeph. He chopped off his own leg for sustenance, all because, this kid he just met shared the same dream as he did. That was reason enough for Zeph to save him. So Zeph was willing to die so that Sanji could live. And, for a kid that was told, yeah, you're a worthless failure, you should never have been born, it was a powerful expression of love, and I get that. And I get that Sanji doesn't ever want Zeph to, be disappointed in him, be like, do anything that would make Zeph think less of him. So to me, he said, powerful expression of love. And I get that Sanji wants Zeph to be proud of him, when he comes back to see him. He wants to be able to look Zeph in the eye and be like, hey, I hope you're proud of me and everything I've accomplished. And I get that's why, he adheres so strictly to the rules, because, like, I don't want Zeph to ever think less of me. But, as I point out in my editorial, that's really kind of a bullshit message for Oda to kind of push and kind of normalize almost, because no child should ever have an obligation to become a clone of their parent, nor should they aspire to be a direct clone. Because I know, big thing of One Piece is, the next generation kind of taking on the dreams and inspiration of the earlier generation, kind of using that to build on their own ones. But it shouldn't be a case of, we're going to do carbon copy exactly what our predecessors did. I think that's the biggest problem with my thing with Sanji is, we are shaped into the people we are by our experiences, interactions with the people we meet, as we journey through life. And no two people's journeys will ever be the same. They'll always have differences in their experiences and their interactions. They'll kind of shape who they are. So Sanji can't assume that, the path that Zeph tread is going to be the same one that he's going to tread, or that the same lessons and rules and things Zeph learned on his journey apply to the one that Sanji is going on. And I think, like, the question I asked about, like, repeatedly on the editorial I wrote was, if Sanji were to say ever hit a woman to save a friend, and when he went back to Zeph, would Zeph really hold that against him? Would Zeph kind of think less of Sanji if he admitted, hey Zeph, Robin was about to be carted off into Ennius Lobby, the gates of justice. Everyone was doing their best to save her life, and I had to get a key from this woman, and she was too powerful for me to beat, or she was too powerful for me to subdue and take the key off, so I had no choice but to defeat her. So I had to hit her to save my friend's life. Is Zeph going to somehow take that and be like, oh, well, you're a disgrace as a man, you're a disgrace as my son, I don't love you, I never want to see you again, I can't believe you do something like this? Or would he actually lose respect for Sanji if he did that? And if he did, is that really the kind of person that Sanji should aspire to be like and idolize? Is a man who's just like, pride matters above anything else, even the life of your friend. Because to me, it comes down to, when Sanji goes back to see Zeph at the end of his journey after he's done everything, isn't it more important that he's able to stand eye to eye with him and say, hey, I may not have strictly adhered to every rule and lesson you ever taught me, but you know what? I'm proud of the way I lived my life. I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of who I become, and nothing's going to change that. And is Zeph going to go, well, I don't love you, I'm disgraced by you because of that? And shouldn't that be all that matters? Is as long as Sanji's proud of who he became, is it really matter if Zeph thinks lesser of him for something as insignificant as, I did this one thing once to save a friend? And to me, this is kind of the heart of Sanji's supposed maturity in this chapter. He's going, Sanji's going, well, sometimes you have to put aside your pride for the greater good. And he's acting as if, oh man, I can't believe, if I put on this Germa suit, it's going to taint me by association. I already talked about this, about the suit and the powers. And my problem isn't that, isn't even the excuses or the things that fans are coming up with for why he put on the suit. My problem with it is that Sanji's only able to spew this line about pride and put it aside because he is in this very specific scenario where he's actually able to do that without giving up something that he really and truly values deeply from the bottom of his heart. Because this scenario only played out because he couldn't control his temper and put aside his pride as a chef in broad daylight when Kaido's forces were everywhere. And again, what gets me is, there hasn't been a drastic change in the stakes, in what was at stake from the moment when his Soba cart got destroyed to the point now where he's just I have to put aside my pride. I guess apart from him now saying, oh no, the villagers in this town are now going to be in trouble because of what's happening. Because when he acted out earlier, they were still fighting an Emperor of the Sea. And again, this goes back to so many of my problems with, what I was talking about with Water 7 and Enies Lobby. Sanji was willing to die, despite claiming, oh, I don't want to die, but what else can I do? And he wasn't actually willing to attack or disarm a woman to save the life of a friend of his. And so, hypothetically speaking, let's say page 1 had been a woman that was chasing after them, an ancient zone woman that was chasing after them instead. Would the scenario have played out exactly the same? Given all the exact same circumstances, would Sanji have done the same thing? Or say in a future scenario, let's say everything plays out like this. We accept that Sanji's progressing or showing some growth. And say there's a future scenario he had to do the same, put aside his pride as a chef or put aside his pride as a man, and you say he had to fight a woman or do something. Would he do that for the sake of the Straw Hats against, say, if they went against Blackbeard and this happened? Oh, excuse me. There is not a chance in hell of that happening, ever. And when I wrote, when I was writing that thread about the false pride, this is exactly what I was talking about. Because Sanji's refusal to put on the suit, was born out of a stubbornness to disavow himself of anything related to his family. And this was kind of the end point I was aiming for the arc I had kind of imagined for him, how it could play out potentially, where he leads up to him putting on the raid suit. Is it's dumb to think that putting on the suit somehow costs him something when it's no different from using a knife or any other kind of weapon or a tool, like say a shield, to protect your crew. Because ultimately, that's all the raid suit is. It's a tool. Now, granted, we don't know what the history of the raid suits are. We don't know if it's like something inherited through Germa, that used to belong to like older generations, or if this was something specifically designed for use by the Vinsmoke siblings. Again, another theory I have, like small digression here, another theory I have is that Sora might have been the one to create the suit. But, yes, I get it that the suit is associated with the name of Germa, but the suit itself is not intrinsically good or evil. So this idea that, I can't use this suit because of the German name is kind of stupid. This is what I was hoping it would lead up to eventually. But, like that's one of my big problems with him pretending like he's giving up something, like it's taking away a bit of something vital to him to put this on, is kind of bullshit, because not really something, it's not a hard decision he should have had to have made. But like I said, that's kind of a small nitpicky thing about it. But what also feels off about the entire scene in 931 is Sanji acting like, he has no choice but to put on the suit, because, no other disguise would somehow be enough. There's nothing else he could have done. And he's acting like, he exhausted all other options, and the raid suit is it, that he needs to put on the raid suit. He has no other choice. And that's really kind of bullshit to me, especially if we're supposed to believe that he has such powerfully conflicted feelings about using the suit. And, given everything we know about him and how strongly he holds on to his pride, the fact he gives it up so easily now, when like not even a day ago he wasn't able to give up his pride on something else, really undercuts that this moment is supposed to feel like a moment of his development. And like the core of the issue to me with this is, with all of Sanji's kind of behaviors, is Oda will never contest or challenge Sanji's beliefs in a meaningful way. We've seen it with Viola, we've seen it with Pudding, where he's used the ages-old sexist trope of women just needed a man, to tell them how misunderstood they are, or to showcase how misunderstood they are and how they needed someone to just empathize with them and understand them and show them a little kindness. They're just acting all along. They weren't really evil, they weren't really to blame for any of this. And he said this pretty much word for word when he first met Viola, and she was giving him the whole spiel about, oh, ha ha ha, you're so dumb. And he goes, no, I know you're a pure-hearted maiden, and you're being forced into this by wicked, wicked men. And Oda, of course, plays into that and be like, yes, they were all acting. None of them were actually ever purely evil. And it pisses me off to no end that Nami was the one to give Sanji a pass on Enya's lobby, for his chivalry, because A, it is super fucking hypocritical to think that there's anything noble about Sanji's attitude or behavior, and it's really, really bullshit to act like it's okay, to give him a pass for that, when his friend is about to die, and literally everyone else on the crew was willing to kill themselves, or sacrifice everything that was important to them to save her. Because I talk about, like, this little comparisons I make to two other characters in that very same arc. Chopper has spent his entire life, being shunned and struggling with his feelings of being a monster, everything that entails, all the trauma that comes with that. And when he's fighting Kumadori, he's just like, oh, what can I do? Like, he's gonna knock me out. Chopper did not have to eat that third Rumble Ball. Chopper could have gone, no, it's too dangerous. No, I want to put my crew in danger. You could do like the bullshit excuse that everyone gives to Sanji for that scene to excuse it is, oh, Sanji had faith in his crew, so it's okay that, he had his chivalry and values on the thing because he had faith that his crew would win in the end. Chopper could have done the very exact same thing and been like, hey, I'm sorry guys, I tried my best, but I don't want to do this. I don't want to cross this line into, eating this third Rumble Ball and becoming uncontrollable. I don't want to die. I'm sorry I couldn't help you save Robin. He could have done the same thing. Instead, he thought of Robin, as she was crying and telling them, I want to live. And he decided, you know what? I don't care what happens to me if I don't save Robin. If I don't do everything in my power to save my friend, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And he willingly turns himself into a monster to save his friend. Robin, again, same arc, when she's being dragged away by Spandam, we see a scene where she's literally biting her teeth into a stone bridge despite being shackled. We see her blood just pouring out of her mouth as she's biting into it. Spandam's beating the crap out of her, but she's doing it because she wants to give her friends every minute that she possibly can to try and catch up so they can rescue her. But Sanji, oh, noble Sanji, the man that can't give up his values and his pride that means so much to him, can't be bothered to hit a woman, to try and save his friend's life, because that would be asking for too much from him. And I'll get into more of like the nitty-gritty details of that later. But the B part to this is so many of these moments in One Piece read like something that goes against Nami's very character, and it reads very much so like a man wrote this, a man interpreting it as how he thinks a woman would approach this. When, all the women I've talked to, there's no way any of them would put up with this bullshit like Nami did. And Nami especially would not put up with this bullshit in the way that Oda wanted us to believe that she did. And you know what? Like, the thing that gets me the most about it is the only reason she's able to do so and that no one really questions or calls out Sanji on this is because Robin ended up safe. Straw Hats won, and there was never a scenario where Sanji's problematic behaviors will actually result in actual consequences. And it's going back to what I said about Viola and him seeing past her facade. It's tempting to kind of go that, Sanji's backstory, with the whole Kick Island and how kind he was and how empathetic he was. And this is the excuse fans have used for him seeing past Pudding. He's like, oh, because he went through life like that, he was able to recognize another person. And it's tempting to think, oh, this is just, Sanji's empathetic powers being put into sharp focus, and he's so good at that he instinctively knew that he was right, that these women were acting. But how can we know that that's what it is if there's never a scenario where he's ever wrong? If there's never a scenario where Sanji either calls out a woman and says, no, you are evil, I'm not going to buy your crap, I know you're doing this by choice, you're not being forced into this by trauma or anything else. How are we supposed to buy it if we never see a scenario like that? And then the other kind of bullshit hypocritical part of this is why am I expected to believe that Sanji's chivalry or nobility or his values or whatever are worth a single iota of shit when he turns right around and does some of the most disgusting crap in all of the series regarding women? You know, because for a man that claims, who bases his identity on the idea that he loves women, he loves doting on them, he loves being affectionate towards them, he loves treating them nicely and giving them good food and making them feel loved and accepted and all that crap. Why is it that, all his attitudes and feelings towards them are completely superficial? Because Sanji is not an ally to women. He does not treat all women equally. And I wrote about this in the last editorial that I wrote. Again, I'll link it in the description below. But I'm not doing this as a thing to be like, I'm trying to shame Sanji for having a type or being attracted to, a certain kind of woman. That's not what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to say is Sanji's shown a complete lack of disregard for women's agency or really their entire well-being. And so it's so great that he's being willing to be super nice to all the attractive women he sees, and he's lavishing them with affection and attention. And wow, yeah, it's really super great to think that, there's nothing wrong with him wanting to see the best in all women. Never want what, no matter what, and he doesn't really want to hurt them because the real man would never do that. Except, what good is any of that? Why does it matter if he's going to ignore all the instances when women are in pain, or they're being oppressed, or they're having their agency ripped away from them? What good is all the false pretenses of claiming to care or love women when he is complicit in assaulting them, almost quite close to, very close to raping them almost, and disregarding their traumas and abuses? Now, I know I'm not going to get a lot of flack for claiming, the raping part about this, because Sanji fans are probably going to tell me that's going too far, that's too much, you're being too unfair to, what Sanji's character is and all that. Let me remind you that on Punk Hazard, when Sanji was in Nami's body, he and Brook were about to run off with Nami's body to do all manners of salacious things with her body. And do you really, really expect me to believe that they would have only stopped at just taking pictures? Is he just gonna pose Nami's body like a gravure idol? Just take sexy swimsuit calendar photos, and then he's gonna be like, well, I'm done now, and he's gonna go back. And more to the point, is that really something we should be saying? At least he would only have been willing to go that far, when it's disgusting to even think that he would violate a woman's agency like that. Someone that's a close friend of his. He's so willing to ignore her agency and her rights to her own body that he literally, sexually objectified her in that way. Is that something that you really want to overlook or ignore in a supposedly noble character, who claims that, I can't hit women because I have to be chivalrous or whatever? And a link in an excellent editorial I've written before that kind of I keep referring back to, talking about one of the earlier arcs. But the author of the article, Cal, wrote about Thriller Bark, specifically about how Nami was almost raped by Absalom, most definitely assaulted by him. And yet when Sanji goes after him, to fight for Nami's honor or whatever crap he's doing, the reasons he gets mad at Absalom is that Absalom was able to see Nami naked in the bath, and he basically goes, "How dare you? How dare you spy on Nami in the bath? She's," the subtext basically reading as, "She's mine and only I have that right to peep on her. How dare you, someone who doesn't appreciate her beauty, kind of do that?" And and then he gets even more mad because he's like, "Oh, you stole my dream of being able to eat the clear fruit and of being able to spy on women," which is the same disgusting fucking joke Oda brought back in this very chapter when Sanji thinks about the raid suit and the invisibility powers. And what really pisses me off about that chapter, like this is exactly what Cal kind of wrote in the article, is how Nami's feelings regarding being violated were outright ignored for the sake of a comedy gag between Absalom and Sanji, about Nami's beauty and how they're both taken in basically by how hot she is. And it's kind of a recurring trend in One Piece that it's always about the men's pain or desires or feelings taking precedent over that of women. And this is not the only time that this has happened, because like I mentioned earlier, when Sanji, is Sanji really any better than Absalom when he on Punk Hazard was about to run off with Nami's body, and he was freely groping and assaulting her as he felt like it? Does that really make him better than that? Like him running off with Nami's body to take pictures of her, I can't think of a more perfect metaphor for how literally Sanji objectifies women. He's literally treating Nami's body like a figurine or a blow-up sex doll that he can do what he likes with, because he can't be held accountable for his actions, because, hey, men are horny, men are going to want to touch women's bodies and tits and all that. Oh, how can he be held responsible for, acting like how any other man would? And, when it's disgusting when you consider what the rape statistics are like, how many women are constantly assaulted every day, how they constantly have to worry about their safety, how they have to constantly worry about their interactions with any strange men that come up to them. And Oda is playing off assault as a joke. And he's having a character who's supposedly chivalrous, who supposedly loves women. He's having that character be the one to carry out all this, because he knows that by doing so, he can play it off as humor. Because fans get really mad at Absalom for doing and thinking the same things that Sanji does. But with Sanji, it's easier to write off his characters like, oh, well, Sanji has all these other characteristics, like, he cares about feeding people, and he's a chef, and he's all that. And Absalom's just a pervert. But that's exactly, textbook what happens with sexual abusers when people defend them. Is they'll go, I can't believe this person would have done this because he's always been so nice to me, or he volunteers at churches or with the homeless people, or he does this and that. And they kind of try to use that to justify the other abhorrent stuff, or kind of deny that that abhorrent stuff exists, because they're like, well, it's not really that serious. Let's just focus on the good stuff. And that's the thing I don't get, is if there was ever a moment where Sanji was called out on his disgusting behavior, or if he actually was shown, learning from it and growing past it, we wouldn't be having this kind of problematic conversation about him constantly. But he never does, which is why I have to keep talking about it, is because we cannot normalize this kind of attitudes as being acceptable or noble or anything like that. I don't want to digress some further because we still have some stuff to talk about. But it's not only that that bugs me, because when talking about Whole Cake, Sanji's talking about how it's a great arc for Sanji, and it's a growth showcase of his kindness and his empathy and all that nonsense. And they conveniently gloss over the scene on Whole Cake Island where Reiju tells Sanji, hey, our mother Sora? She had her agency forcibly stripped away by the father you claim to so hate, and she was experimented on against her will so that he could modify, you and your brothers into these fighting machines. And she had to take a poison to counteract the effects, and that's what led her to die. And Reiju even says, hey, I can't leave this wedding and run away because Judge has made sure to strip away my agency and I cannot disobey his orders. And all Sanji was focused on was his pain and his need to absolve himself of the guilt which his mother, the guilt of his mother's death. And Reiju was happy to do it because, again, Whole Cake was just a reinforcement of this idea that women are only here to only here to lessen men's pain and trauma at the expense of their own. And a guy that claims to love women can't even be bothered to offer them the basic decency of respect he would anyone else. And what galls me about Whole Cake Island, this is why I dislike it when fans claim it's such a great arc, is there was not even one scene where Sanji kind of acknowledged that he heard Reiju's, declaration that her agency was stripped away, and that he understood her pain and her desire to take action. Because this was something I kind of posted about on Twitter earlier with regards to kind of Reiju's powers and the thematic connection. But I wondered, if Reiju's poison powers, I'm not giving Oda any credit for possibly having thought of this because I don't think he would have. But I wonder if Reiju's poison powers thematically tie into the idea that she wished that she had these powers, back when her mother was lay dying because of the poison. I wonder if Reiju, the thematic tie into this was Reiju thinking, I wish I had the power, to suck out the poison like I do now. Because maybe back then when my mother lay dying, I could have saved her. Because we never really ever focus on the relationship between Reiju and Sora, because it never mattered, because it was all about Sanji and Sanji's kindness and how good Sanji is, and how Sanji's so lovable and so kind and he deserves better. And you never once see this asshole that claims to love women, take Judge to task and say, how dare you, Vince Smoke Judge, strip away my mother's agency and experiment on her like that. I can't believe at any point I ever wanted your love or affection. And I can't believe that I'm related to you. Or he never even went the extra step of saying, I want you to give Reiju back her agency. And I have story reasons for why Oda could write it off later. Which I'm not trying to say excuses what happens here. But you never even see Sanji saying, if you don't do it, I will beat you until you do, because that is unacceptable. He had the time to tell Judge to his face, I don't consider you my father, and I never want to hear you threatening my real father ever again. But hey, you want to torture my sister? Go ahead, why do I care? Because why does he really care, right? Because he's not attracted to his sister, so why should he care about her as a person beyond the superficial stuff? So, when some people keep telling me that, just because Sanji's values are different from mine, I can't judge him for it, because he values something different from me. I can't call him out on it. And I'm here to tell you, I sure as fuck can't. Because Sanji's values mean as much as someone that claims to believe, oh, I stand for freedom. I believe in freedom and equality for all people. And that same person will stay silent, when they watch minority demographics being dehumanized and caged and brutalized and having their rights as people stripped away and claiming that basically, hey, I believe in freedom and I'd never do any of that, but I'm not actually going to speak up or take action to make sure other people don't do that because it's enough as long as I don't do it, which is the extent of what's, to me, Sanji's vow to not hit women goes is him saying, well, I would never hit women or do these horrible things to them, so it's okay for me to hold on to these values because Zeph told me to. And like the arguments fans were tossing me before was like, well, you wouldn't force a vegan to eat meat, would you? To try to argue why Sanji should be forced to, kind of bend his values. If I was a vegan, or if one of my friends was a vegan, and, they were told, gun to my head, they're told, if you don't eat this beef burger I'm putting in front of you right now, your friend is going to die. Right? Would I really say it's okay for them to protect their values, say like, oh, I don't want you to give up what you believe in for being a vegan. I want you to sit there and not eat that burger as I get killed. And again, this comes back to a point I've been asking that no one's actually been able to give me an answer for. Would Sanji be able to live with himself if he had actually failed to save Robin and he knew, like absolutely without a doubt, 100% knew that he was the sole person responsible for failing to protect her? So, or on his deathbed, would he be lying there thinking, man, I couldn't save Robin that one time, but hey, man, I'm sure I never kicked a woman once in my life. It's hard for me to talk about pride, even on all this after this little mini rant I've gone on, because there are no hard and fast rules. When you're faced with a situation that asks you to examine it, it's complex and messy emotion. That said, I think there are, a few kind of rules of thumbs that you can kind of go with, that I think characters in stories should consider. And one would be ask yourself what the trade-off is. What can you stand to lose versus what will you gain? And, again, I stand by the assertion that Sanji's only able to hold on to these values of his because deep down when Oda's writing him, he does so with the express knowledge he'll never have to lose anything, or he'll never be placed in a situation where his beliefs or values will ever be wrong or they'll ever be challenged. And B is be introspective. And again, you're not always going to be right, and sometimes your opinion will be outright wrong or offensive. But how will you ever tell that your values or your outlook is wrong or offensive if you're never challenged on it, if everything you do reaffirms your belief? And that's, again, something that Oda does consistently, is reaffirm Sanji's idea that, hey, these values of yours, yeah, they're really good, just hold on to them. And he's never had a point where he's actually forced Sanji to think, hey, am I actually in the wrong on this? And so I actually want to see if I can actually just quickly find a quote I had, because this is something I actually wrote in my false pride thread. But those of you who know me know that one of my uh, one of my big one of the series that I love a lot is the Dresden Files, right? And one of my favorite quotes from that series, uh, again, I'll link this in the thread. I just want to read off this part of it. One of my favorite quotes from the series comes from a moment when the main character is going through his own crisis of faith, and he's having a conversation with his father. And this is how it plays out. So he goes, I crossed a line. His father's like, I know. It only means what you decide it means. And he's like, what? His father goes, Harry, life isn't simple. There is such a thing as black and white, right and wrong. But when you're in the thick of things, sometimes it's hard for us to tell. You didn't do what you did for your own benefit. You did it so you could protect others. That doesn't make it right, but it doesn't make you a monster either. You still have free will. You still get to choose what you will do and what you will become. As long as you believe you're responsible for your choices, you still are. And another that comes later that kind of ties into everything I've been talking about is take the high road if you want to. Choose to walk away from this strength in the name of principle. But after your noble death, everyone who might one day have come to you for help, everyone who was killed in the aftermath of the Dark Hallow, every life you might have protected in the future will be on your head. That is the act of a coward. It is beneath contempt. And again, to me, this is like everything I've been hopefully, this is everything I've been talking about in this, and I hope everyone can kind of see what I meant when I was talking about everything up to this point. But I'll kind of wind it down here and end it by saying, Oda has had some fantastic examples in the series of characters swallowing their pride for the sake of others, and those have been some of the most exceptional moments in the series. You have the moment from Nami on Arlong Park when she finally asks for help from, Luffy and the others after years of trying to wriggle her way out from under Arlong's thumb on her own merit. You have Zoro, both on Thriller Bark and later post Marineford. Thriller Bark, where, I'm sorry, what's striking about the Thriller Bark one is when you look back at the start of the series, when Zoro first meets Luffy, he tells him, hey, if you ever get in the way of my dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, I will cut you down, for the sake of my dream, because I made a promise to a dear friend. And on Thriller Bark, you have this exceptional moment where Zoro tells Kuma, this brilliant kind of moment of like humility and pride where he says, take my head because one day I will become the world's greatest swordsman in the world. Kind of an arrogant statement, but not completely untrue. And he's surrendering to Kuma, and he's accepting the fact, the world needs Luffy more than it needs me. With the whole the scene even after that where he goes, oh, nothing happened. You see that Zoro feels like his life is a small, his life, his pride, his dream. All of that was a small price to pay for the life of his captain. And then again, you see it on Mihawk's Island when Zoro gets thrown there. And he goes and begs him, does the Dozeka pose and begs him, says, please take me on as your pupil because I don't have the strength or the training necessary right now to achieve my dream. And at first, Mihawk's kind of disgusted with him. He's like, hey, I thought you were better than this, but I guess you have no pride at all. And then he realizes that, hey, no, this guy's not doing this for his own sake. He's doing it for the sake of someone else. And, he's talking about how exceptional that person must be to make someone like Zoro put aside their pride for them. And it's such a great moment because it shows Case's actual growth and development for a character from the beginning of the series up to that point. And even an earlier example that one of my friends was reading through, and he pointed this out. But even on Drum, Vivi gets shot when Luffy tries to pick a fight with Dalton and the others because they won't let him on. And she admonishes him for acting out, in a rage without trying diplomacy. And she reminds him of, you are the captain of this ship. You have a responsibility to your crew. You cannot act rashly. And Luffy swallows his pride and says, you know what? Yes, I was wrong. I apologize. And he gets down on his knees next to Vivi and begs alongside her, please let us onto your island. My friend is very sick. She needs help. So it's not like Oda doesn't understand what these kinds of moments are, how to write them properly. So why couldn't he have done the same for Sanji? I guess for Sanji comes down to the fact that in order to do so, he'd have to understand why Sanji's actions are problematic and sexist, and why the chivalry thing isn't noble. But I don't know if he's ever actually going to reach a point where he does acknowledge that. And to me, Sanji putting aside his pride reads to me like a bargaining technique where, where you come in with that outrageous initial offer, and then you come in with something more reasonable after that, and you make it look like you're capitulating and you're giving something up. You're like, oh, you're driving a hard bargain, when you know from the outset that it is all bullshit and it's all just an act. To me, this is what it seems like Oda's trying to go for with, so Sanji's putting aside his pride but putting on the raid suit. Is by doing this, he can give the illusion of change and growth. But he can still have Sanji hold on to, all the other times in the future when he won't give up something he truly values. He can be like, hey, he will do it in certain situations, but he's not willing to give up some things. And that's why this doesn't read well to me, because I'm like, he's not giving up something meaningful. He wants us to give us that illusion. So, again, I'm kind of tired right now. It's very late here, and I've kind of been ranting long enough. Long rant over, so I hope you all enjoyed the video, or at least found my thoughts, somewhat thought-provoking or interesting. If you feel like there's something I said in this video that you disagree with, or you think I've misunderstood or haven't interpreted correctly, or you have a counter argument, please do comment either here below in the video or on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at King Cocoa Butter, so you can always either just at me or DM me with your thoughts. I'm always willing to have a conversation about this. I actually put my Twitter handle in the video below as an easier way to find me. And if you like my videos, please do like, subscribe, so I can kind of improve my channel, make some more additions to it, upgrade the quality and all that stuff, make it a little bit more permanent. But thank you all for your support, for tuning in. And this is Ash. Until next time, talk to you then.